Hi, folks. This is Ron with the Aurora Chasers, bringing you another episode of our live stream workshop series. In this week's episode, over on our Facebook live stream, we covered how to shoot and stitch panorama images in Adobe Photoshop Lightroom. And we'd like to share that with you folks here. So let's get into it. Hey, everybody. Welcome to this week's live stream workshop series. In this week's edition, we're going to be discussing panorama photography and how to process panoramas, and even a little bit about how to shoot them, but mostly about how to process them in Adobe Lightroom. We're doing a new time, obviously, usually a little bit earlier in the day. We had some folks say this was a little difficult for them with school, for kids with online school and all of that kind of stuff. So we're trying out a new time. Let us know down in the comments how you guys are enjoying this and if this time works out for you or if there's a different time that's better for you. We're going to continue to do these every week on Wednesdays. Next week, we're going to probably go through a basics tutorial about how to navigate Lightroom. Some folks have requested that we talk about the beginnings of Lightroom, how to get into it, how to use it, and that kind of stuff. So we'll do a basic tutorial next week on Lightroom. And then the following week, we are hoping to be set up to do a live stream photography from home project. So we'll give that a shot, see how that goes. Hopefully we'll be all set up for that. But we'll be announcing that in the coming weeks. But first, we just want to say you guys have been amazingly supportive. We very much appreciate your guys' support. It has been amazing to have you guys purchase our prints, tune into what we're doing here, watch our videos, support us on YouTube, all the different things you guys have done. Thank you so much. It's been encouraging and it's keeping us going and keeping us motivated to keep bringing this kind of content. So appreciate that. I do want to give a couple of quick plugs here to some of our stuff. There's some new things that we are going to be doing. So starting as of today, this just launched today, we are now doing gift cards. So because of the uncertainty with COVID-19 and not knowing when we're going to be able to travel and when we're going to be able to officially say, hey guys, come on out with us on our tours, we are offering gift cards. So you can now purchase those gift cards. They are 25% off of the regular tour price, which is the biggest discount we have ever done on our tours. You can purchase those, hang on to them, and when things are more clear and we are ready to start doing tours, you guys can jump in then and purchase your tour spots using those gift cards. So if you wanted to support us and you plan on going on a tour anyway, and you know that you're going to be traveling once things get going again, that's a great way to do it and get a really good discount. So you can find that info on our website. As soon as you load up the website for the first time, it should pop up a big window which loads up an option to buy those gift cards. If you have any troubles with that, let me know. Shoot me an email and I can send you a link directly for the website. And as always, you can always order prints from us at ronmurrayphoto.com. You'll see both Marquetta's work there, my work there. You'll see mostly Aurora stuff, but we do have some Alaska wildlife, landscapes, and we're starting to populate some of our Hawaii images on there as well. So that always is a huge bit of help. Print sales are one of the things that give us a little bit of passive income. So if you guys want to help out there, we greatly appreciate it. And again, thank you to all of you who did already purchase a print in the last couple of weeks. You guys have been amazing. Okay, guys, let's jump into it. Next thing I want to talk about is Lightroom. This is going to be in the version of Lightroom Classic again, just like last time. And full disclaimer, just like last time, this is assuming you already have some basic understanding of how to work through Lightroom. If you don't, again, next week, we'll be bringing you a basics tutorial for Lightroom where we'll walk through the whole process of setting up a catalog, importing your images, keywording, and then do some basic developments just so you guys can see how that process goes. So we'll be shooting some content over the next week just so that we have some brand new images to work with, and we'll work through how to do that entire process, help you get started on it. So we're going to be dealing with panoramas today. So what is a panorama? Couple of different definitions from Oxford. A unbroken view of a whole region surrounding an observer. A picture or photograph containing a wide view. A complete survey or presentation of a subject or sequence of events. In other words, we're capturing a very wide view and kind of capturing, like in this case, this photo that Marquetta has here is a 180-degree field of view. So why shoot a panorama? There's several reasons to shoot panoramic images. The first and foremost for me is always resolution. We have amazing technology at our disposal. Of course, these cameras have gotten up into 50 and 60 megapixels now for the full frame, 35 millimeter. So we get lots more detail than we used to, but let's say we need a little bit more. Maybe we want to print something extremely large, or we need that quality. That's where panoramas come in, because they allow us to shoot several images and then stitch them together to essentially get far more resolution than we normally would. So that's one reason. Another reason might be for composition. Maybe there's just not another way to capture that entire scene around you. In this case, I think Marketa was probably shooting with about a 14 millimeter lens, but she still wasn't able to capture all of that detail in that single shot. So she had to take 7 images, as you'll see later, and put this together to be able to capture the full view. So coverage is another reason, composition, things like that. Another thing might be maybe you're out shooting some wildlife, as I did recently, and you've got, say, a 200 millimeter lens on, and you're not able to grab that wide angle shot, but the landscape and the lighting and everything else is just absolutely stunning. That would be a great reason to shoot a panoramic. You could shoot, in several different layers. You can shoot shot by shot by shot by shot, but Lightroom now does a really good job at shooting in rows and columns. So you can shoot, say, a row of 6 shots this way, another row of 6 shots this way, and then another row of 6 shots. And Lightroom's gotten really good at handling all of that information and stitching it all together, as long as you cover or give yourself enough coverage to do that. And we'll talk about that in just a little bit here. So how do you shoot a panorama? Let's get into that. And we'll talk about one that Marketa shot recently. So generally speaking, with Lightroom, if you give yourself about a half a frame overlap, you're going to get enough information for a panorama. When you are shooting with an extremely wide angle lens, sometimes that's not enough because you'll end up with a lot of distortion. And so in this example, you'll see Marketa took 5 shots to get what would normally probably be about a 3-image shot if you were shooting with, say, a normal 50 millimeter lens. But in this case, she wanted to make sure her trees weren't super distorted and things like that. So you'll see in the first shot, that box of red would be the first frame. And then the next frame, just a slight overlap. And then the next frame. So you just move a little bit, and you can do this right or left. It doesn't matter which side you start from. Lightroom's pretty good at figuring it out. And then the 4th frame, and then there's the 5th frame. So that's our coverage for to get this single pano shot. And then we bring it into Lightroom and stitch it all together. So let's get into some of that. Let's start with a basic image. Let's see. Let's back out of this, and we'll find just a two image pano to start with. Here's one that's just 2 images. So Marketa shot this one for us, and this is kind of starting off with the simplest. So what you want to do is either Control or Shift click. Typically, if I'm trying to select multiple images, I will click the first one and then hold Shift and then click the final image, and that selects all of them. So in this case, we're going to do this with just these 2 images. And now at this point, you have 2 different options. I'm going to show you without the keyboard shortcut first. You can right click and go to Photo Merge and then Panorama, or you can go up here to Photo and then Photo Merge Panorama, or Marketa's favorite way to do it is with the keyboard shortcuts, and that's honestly the quickest way to do anything is learn those shortcuts, which would be Control M. So we're going to click Merge, and we've got a couple of different options here for how we want this to stitch together, and you can see this one went pretty quickly. So we have spherical, cylindrical, and perspective. Now, we have a couple of different definitions of those types of things. So let's talk about what those different modes are. Typically, what I'm going to do is use cylindrical, but I like to play with the different perspectives and see what I get. In this image, perspective is probably going to work, but you see it stretches everything out, and we'll talk about why in a minute. Cylindrical looks like my best option in this case. But perspective's not looking too bad either. But let's talk about the different modes. So for these different modes, spherical, these are the definitions according to Adobe's website. Spherical aligns and transforms the images as if they were mapped to the inside of a sphere. This projection mode is great for really wide or multi-row panoramas. So if you were shooting, say, one of those shots we discussed earlier, where you take one row of photos, you drop the camera down a little bit, you take another row of photos, and then you do the same thing. Spherical is a really good way to do that. So think of it like this. Think of your shots as though you were shooting in a sphere. So you've got both top to bottom and left to right kind of covered in that shot. That would be a good time to use spherical. Cylindrical is if you just shoot a couple of horizontal shots, which is the case in this image, which is why it's going to work better for us here. Now, if I had this auto crop turned off, actually, let me go back to cylindrical and perspective, and we'll talk about the definitions of them. But cylindrical projects the panorama, HDR panorama, as if it were mapped to the inside of a cylinder. This projection mode works really well for wide panoramas, but it also keeps vertical lines straight. So our trees are going to stay nice and straight, things like that. Really helpful in this situation. And because we didn't shoot rows of images, we only shot vertically for our pano, this is going to be the best mode to use. Perspective is a little tricky, and a lot of times I'm going to go in here and do some of these images, and you'll see perspective does not even work on a lot of these because we've shot too many images. Let's give the definition, and then I'll talk about where perspective is useful and when I would use it. So perspective projects the panorama, HDR panoramas, as if it were mapped to a flat surface. Since this mode keeps straight lines straight, it's great for architectural photography. Really wide panoramas may not work well with this mode due to excessive distortion near the edges. And when we go into that perspective, we can see quite a bit of distortion. Really, if you're going to use perspective, instead of panning the camera, the best way to shoot a perspective shot would be to move the camera. So maybe you start your shot and then you walk 10 feet to the right or to the left and you take another shot and then you do the same thing. So if you were in an architectural environment where you could move that camera to overlap shots and you could keep the image flat each time instead of turning the camera, that might be a better route to go. That's kind of where I like to use the drone, because the drone, typically I'm shooting flat. I'm moving the actual camera around. I'll give you guys an example of that. Let's go ahead and just merge this out and let me show you a couple of ways that this works while we're right here though. So we decided we're going to choose cylindrical, and if I uncheck the auto crop box, you can see that some kind of funky stuff starts to happen. Now, if I wanted to get more out of this frame, I can do a boundary warp, and I can expand the boundaries of that image. And what I typically do is I try to not distort. So now you see my tree line over on the right edge there is starting to distort a little bit. So we're going to bring that back a touch, maybe about halfway. And another thing that I could do is fill the edges. And then Lightroom is going to go through and use basically content-aware fill to fill the edges. Now, if I just had empty sky, not a big deal, but because this is an aurora and star image, I don't like to use that because then I feel like I'm adding stars in that weren't there. And if I have an astronomer looking at my photo, I want them to see what's really there. And now I've added a bunch of information that didn't exist. And so it's kind of, I guess, to me in this particular situation, kind of cheapens it. So if I hit auto crop now I've got a nice wide shot. And I could do auto settings if I want, which is going to treat the exposure and the contrast and all of that kind of stuff. I don't like how it handles aurora shots. I do like how it handles most landscape shots. So for landscapes, I'll use that and then fine tune it in my development settings. But in this case, I'm going to leave it alone and then I will develop the image later. So we're just going to hit merge. And that one should take a couple of seconds. You can see now it's creating that panorama. And if we want, we can move on to other things while it's doing that. And then our panorama will spit out in just a moment and be done for us. And there it is. So that's our first one. Now back to the perspective and where that might come in handy. A great example of that, let's go ahead and build one from one of my favorite spots here on the Big Island, which is Kiholo. Kiholo is this beautiful little brackish water place where the fresh water comes in, meets the ocean, and then there's kind of a lagoon here. And you can kind of see that in this shot. Now, I'm shooting this with the drone, and I'm shooting straight down. So this is a great time to use perspective and move my drone physically back and forth and side to side to capture all the different angles I want and then put it together in a perspective mode. The reason I would do that in this particular case is I am at my 400-foot limit right here. Legally, you can fly a drone only 400 feet high in the US, and that's where I'm at in this case. And so this is as much coverage as I could get in a single frame. And unfortunately, it does not do justice to what I'm trying to show here. I want to show that entire thing. So I decided to shoot a pano, and so I shot a shot, move the drone, shot a shot, move the drone, shot a shot, move the drone. And you can see I just incrementally adjusted my coverage. Now, as we build this panel, you're going to see I ended up missing one frame, but that's okay. That's where that autofill is going to come in handy. So what we're going to do is click the first image and then shift click the last image. And we're going to hit Control M to merge. Now, since we are already in cylindrical, it's going to default to that. And we'll go ahead and let it build that preview, and then I'll show you what that looks like. But then we're going to move into perspective. So this kind of warps it just a little bit. I'm going to uncheck auto crop, and you can see that one extra frame that I missed that I should have shot with the drone. So let's go into perspective and see how that looks. Much better. It's flattened it out a little bit and just made the overall image look much better. And now you can see the entire contents of this place. Just amazing. In this case, I am going to use fill edges because that little bit of water is not detrimental to the overall image, and it just kind of does a nice job of filling that in. Let's see what happens if we click auto settings here. A little too bright, so again, in this case, I'm going to leave that alone. I will go in and develop this because it's going to give me a nice DNG file to play with after the fact. So we'll go ahead and leave that, and we'll merge that together. And now we have a beautiful full coverage shot of Quijolo that we could have never got if we were flying legally and safely with the drone. Another example of that with the drone is the local harbor here. I'm not going to take the time to stitch that entire thing together. We're looking at a total of 47 images, which would take us quite a while. It would take more time than we want. But here is the finished product. And this thing has so much resolution that Lightroom has a hard time with it. If I zoom all the way in at 1:1, it won't let me see it. Okay, so let's play with another Aurora shot. Let's try this 4-image pano and see how that ends up looking. So we're going to grab this first shot here, and then we're going to grab the last shot by shift clicking, and we're going to go photo merge, panorama. And in this case, again, because we just have all shots in a singular row, I think that's going to work out pretty well for us on the cylindrical. You can see perspective does not work well in this situation. Okay, kind of looking a little funky there. So let's go ahead and do a boundary warp. We're going to bring that out a little bit, stretch things out, and it's actually looking pretty decent. Let's go ahead and bring it back just a touch. And instead of, I am going to auto crop, but then we're going to go into develop and we're going to crop this ourselves after the fact. So let's go ahead and merge that. We'll let that build, and then we'll do a little development on it. Takes a few more minutes because this has a few more files in it. There we go. Okay, let's pull this into the develop module. Okay, there we go. Go ahead and grab our crop tool. First thing we want to do is just straighten that horizon up a little bit. We're going to bring this down just a little bit for our composition, and that looks really nice. A little bit of waviness to that because it is such a wide shot, but not too bad. I'm not going to go through the full development settings. If you guys missed last week's tutorial, you can tune back in. That is on our Facebook page, and we did cover how to develop Aurora images. Got a little bit of a white corner on the bottom, so we'll just bring that up just a touch and crop it just like that. And there we go. All right, let's get a little more crazy. And then let's talk about some pitfalls. Let's play with, let's see, Marquetta has this really beautiful one up here. We've got 5 shots there. And actually, I know she gave me 2 more because that was actually a total of 7. So let me bring in those last 2 frames as well. I'm going to add those to our collection here. And now let's play with these. Okay, so one of the things Marketa likes to do beforehand is she likes to do a little lens correction. So let's play with the develop module. We're going to remove chromatic aberration. We're going to enable lens profiles. In this case, let's see if we can figure out what lens she had. Okay, it does not give us lens information, which tells me what I need to know. She was shooting with the Nikkor 14-24 on her Canon camera, which is one of her favorite combinations. So we're going to go in and find Nikkor lenses, or Nikon it looks like, and we're going to look for the 24 or the 14-24 millimeter here. And there we go. There's the 14-24. Okay, and you can see not a lot of distortion there, just a slight bit, but this is going to help us in the overall processing, because if we don't correct that distortion and that vignetting, we're going to see ripples of that throughout the image. So now that we have done that to this one image, we can easily sync that across all of our images by shift-clicking the entire set, clicking sync, and then uncheck everything, so check none, and then in this case, I'm just going to check lens corrections, because that's the only thing I want to synchronize across all the images. Then Lightroom's just going to paste those same settings all the way across the board and save us a bunch of time. Now we'll go back into the library here. We already have shift-clicked all those images. We still have them selected. So again, I'm going to hit Control-M, and we're going to merge, and this time we are in cylindrical, which is what we want. We're going to go ahead and uncheck that auto crop, and then we're going to boundary warp this thing out and see if we can get an image that looks similar to what Marketa had up there. Now we've gone a little too far there. Something about like that. Now let's go ahead and auto crop that. And we're looking a lot closer to Marketa's image. And let's go ahead and merge that. And you can see it's still building here, taking a little bit of time. While that's merging, let me show you another photo that was cool with the drone. This is Waipio Valley, another great reason you might use Pano mode. And the new software in most of the modern DJI drones, at least, has a built-in automated Pano mode, which is fantastic. What it does for us is it shoots a shot. You tell it where you want the center of the image to be. So in this case, I pointed it right here. And then what it does is it takes that frame, it takes a frame above and a frame below, and then it moves all the way to the left edge, takes 1, 2, 3 shots, 1, 2, 3 shots, and then does the same thing all the way across for a total of 18 images. Now, the drone will stitch this automatically in software and spit you out a JPEG file ready to go. But you do have the option in your settings to tell it to give you and save those raw files from that Pano mode. So I like to do both, because sometimes I just want to share it out to Instagram and I want to be done with it. Sometimes I like to have those files and come back in and play with them in post-production in Lightroom, because quite frankly, Lightroom with a raw file does a much better job of doing this Pano, and I find that I end up getting a lot more information. For example, the DJI version of this cropped somewhere around here, and it was a little bit more warped up. So by bringing this into Lightroom, I had a little bit more control, and then in this very contrasty situation, I could also bring out some of those shadows of that beautiful Waipio Valley. So just an example of where you might use that with a drone to get a kind of shot that you wouldn't otherwise be able to get. Okay, let's see if our photo is built. Looks like it is done. I didn't get quite close to what Marketa got, so we may have to have her teach us how to do this at one point. I definitely like her version of that much better. She has a better perspective and a little less warpage in there. But what we are going to do is straighten out our horizon here. So we're a little funky there. We're going to bring that edge down just a bit. There we go. Oh, we got to bring the bottom up just a little bit. We might have tried, yeah, spherical might have gave us a better perspective on this one. Probably should have tried that. Okay. So that's kind of that process. Now, let's talk about some pitfalls before we move on and do another image. Some of the pitfalls I have come across over the years of doing this is, one, using polarizer filters. Polarizer filters, while brilliant for making beautiful, rich colors against the sun, can kind of get in our way when we're doing panoramas, as you can see here, because the light changes so much depending on the angle. or the polarization angle from the sunlight. So you can see here I ended up with this really big dark patch in here. I personally don't mind it too much in this image, but I would prefer it wasn't there. It would have been nice if the sky was nice and uniform across the board there. So getting rid of polarizing filters might be a good idea. I'm going to show you another example of what can really get in your way, and that's dust spots. So we talked about a reason you might shoot panoramas would be you were out shooting wildlife and you had a longer focal length. That's the case here. I was shooting with the 2-600, and 200 millimeters was the widest I could get. But this mountain scene looked just absolutely stunning. One of the things that happened is this was in the middle of our Aurora season. And in Aurora season, I honestly don't pay too much attention to dust spots because most of the time I'm shooting wide open at f2.8 in the dark, and I never even notice them or see them. But in this case, I certainly did. This was kind of a problem. And as you can imagine, if I were to stitch a few of these together, I'm not going to do the full thing because I'll show you another little trick about this in a moment. But let's grab 4 of these and let's go ahead and Control M and merge these together. Now, what happens here is all of that dust spots become even worse and spread out throughout my entire image. And that's a problem. I don't want to deal with that. So I should have cleaned that up on the sensor to begin with. But what I could do is go into my development settings and clean up those dust spots and then sync that across the board and then just double check all of my images to make sure it didn't hit the mountains or something like that. So we'll do just a quick demo of that. Go into our spot removal tool here, make sure we've got it set to hill instead of clone, and we're going to magnify in a bit. We're going to clean up that spot. This one's going to be a little tricky because it's right at the edge of that mountain. We're going to try to not get too close. Going to clean up that one. There's some more here. And I'm not going to get too picky. This is just for demonstration purposes. I'd spend quite a bit of time detailing this out and making sure all of this was right. But let me show you another little trick if you haven't figured this out. If you want to visualize your dust spots, there's 2 ways to do it that work well. If you click this little visualize dust spot image, you can adjust this slider back and forth, and then you can really start to find those dust spots. So when we bring it all the way to the edge, if you want to get super picky about it, you could clean up every single one of these that you see here. And because there's no other detail in here, not really a big deal to use it in this mode and do so. Now, most of those, honestly, I wasn't even seeing when we had the image up. But let me show you another way to do that. Uncheck this visualize. And you can use dehaze as a filter for finding dust spots as well. So if you take your dehaze filter all the way up to the extreme, that also pops out all of those different dust spots so that you can really see them. And then again, if you missed last week, just double click on any of those sliders and that defaults back to 0. Okay, but we got most of those visible dust spots cleaned up. So let's go ahead and sync that image across several images. So let's just pick 5 of them here. We're going to hit sync. And in this case, I'm going to check none, and then I'm just going to do spot removal and then synchronize. Now, I do need to double check these because I was close to that mountain, and let's say I'm over here now and the mountain's up a little bit higher. I may end up with some funky looking little spots in there. So let's double check. This one's looking okay. That one I can see a funny little spot, so let's just double check our spots. And so what I'm going to do is just delete that one. I'm probably going to delete that one. We're going to delete that one, and that one. And so now we're looking okay. And I would do that across the entire set of images. Now, when I did try to stack this one together, I was coming across some issues. Let me show you what happens when Lightroom doesn't like to play nice. So we're going to go Control M, again, to merge a few of these together. Oh, of course, now it's going to work for me today. Let's try to grab a few more of those then. Let's see what happens now. Control M. And on that drone shot of the harbor, by the way, I brought in all 47 images at once, and I was able to merge those all together at the same time. In this case, it's not going to let me do the 8. And yesterday, it wasn't letting me do more than 2 in some situations and 4 in others. So there's a way around that. So let's talk about how to deal with that. If I was struggling and I was getting that error, what I would do is grab 2 or 3 of these, and we know 3 worked before. So let's go ahead and merge these together. And I would build that out, and then I would go to the next set of images, maybe 2 or 3 more images, and I would merge those together. And once I had all of those different sections merged together, I can merge the already merged sections together and build that panorama. And so sometimes that's a workaround if you're struggling, if you've got a multi-image panorama that Lightroom isn't treating well. All right. So let's take this nice image that Marquetta built. This was our example image from earlier. She has a total of, looks like 5 images here. And I had built that a little bit different way, so we're going to build it her way. So the first thing I'm going to do is go to develop on this first image. We're going to do lens corrections on this. And let's find out what lens she was shooting with this one. So she had the Canon EOS R, and it looks like she had the 15 to 35 lens. You can even see Andromeda there, some beautiful clarity in this lens. And you can see the lens correction in this image does make a pretty significant difference. So we're going to grab that, and then we're going to sync that across all 5 images, just like before. Check none, lens corrections only, and synchronize. Now we'll go back into library, and we could do this through the develop module. I just always prefer to take some of the load off of Lightroom while I'm doing it. So we're going to, now that we have those selected, we will Control M for merge. And we're going to unauto crop. And I think the way I built this for showing you guys how to shoot it was in spherical mode, which is going to give us this. But as you can see, the cylindrical mode actually works a lot better because we're getting a lot more of that Milky Way. And then we can do that boundary warp. And this image especially takes that really well, and it actually starts to straighten out our trees. And right about there, we don't want to go so much we're really distorting that edge, and then we will auto crop that image, and that already looks really nice. Now, if we did auto settings again, way over processes this image. So we're going to leave that off, and we would develop it ourselves after. We just click merge, and we are all set. Thanks again for tuning in. Really, really appreciate you guys. Social links, of course, Facebook, you guys are here, so you know that one. Would love if you guys would follow us on Instagram as well. Instagram.com/the Aurora Chasers. And then YouTube would be hugely helpful if you guys would follow us over there. We're trying to get our subscribers up there, and we are also producing content there. And then one final thing. Again, guys, if you wanted to book a tour, but you're not sure when you're going to be able to come because of travel restrictions, things like that, great opportunity now until the end of May 31st. We are doing gift cards. Go to our website. You'll get a pop-up window to book those, and they are 25% off right now, which is our biggest discount we've ever done. If you guys want to support us, that's a great way to do it and be able to book a tour later when there's more certainty. So we really, really appreciate those of you who are able to do that. And you can always visit the website. You can also visit ronmurrayphoto.com to purchase our prints. And again, for those of you who have done that, thank you so much. You guys are helping keep us afloat, helping us put food on the table right now. So we really, really appreciate your support. Thanks again, guys, for tuning in. We'll be back next week with some Lightroom basics. And hopefully the week after that, we'll do a live shoot for a project for things that you can do right at home. All right, guys, thanks for tuning in. And if you enjoyed this, please do give us a big thumbs up. You guys know the drill. Go ahead and click that subscribe button if you haven't already, and leave us some comments. Let us know if you got some value out of this and how you're going to use this in the future. And if you want to see the video on Aurora, go ahead and click this video right here, and we'll teach you how to edit some Aurora photos. All right, guys, thanks again. Check you later.